Billionaire publicly ended our marriage on TV while carrying his newborn child. The twist will shock you. I was told you died, Donna. On the operating table. During the emergency cesarean, they handed me our daughter in a hallway and told me you did not survive. I buried you. I stood in a room with an empty casket because there was no body, and I said goodbye to the only woman I have ever loved. And the whole time, you were alive. Donna Green stood at the window of her attorney's conference room, her forehead pressed against the cold glass, her breath leaving small clouds on the surface that appeared and vanished like ghosts. Behind her, a man she had not seen in 6 years was dismantling the only story she had ever believed about her own life. And every word he spoke was a detonation. "That is a lie," she whispered without turning around. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking against the windowsill. "You stood on a stage in front of 14 million people holding a baby and told the world our marriage was over. I watched it from a hospital bed. I watched it 47 times. I memorized every second of those 93 seconds. So do not stand there and tell me you thought I was dead when I watched you smile on that stage, Stephen. I watched you smile." "I was not smiling," Stephen said, and his voice cracked in a way that made Donna's attorney look down at the table. "I was surviving. I was a man holding his 9-day-old daughter at an event I was contractually required to attend, trying to find a single reason to keep breathing. The woman standing beside me was a neonatal nurse I hired to help with Lucia's care. She was not my partner. She was not my lover. She was the only person in that building who knew how to operate a feeding tube in case our premature daughter needed one during the event. When I said my marriage was over, I meant you were gone. I meant the woman I built my entire life around was dead. I meant I was alone." The room was silent except for the sound of Donna's breathing against the glass. Vera sat in the chair behind her, tears running silently down her face. The attorney had stopped pretending to review documents, and Donna Green, who had spent 6 years constructing an identity from the wreckage of what she believed was betrayal, felt the first crack appear in the foundation of everything she thought she knew. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Because to understand how a single broadcast destroyed 2 lives and created an empire, to understand how a conspiracy built on forged documents and calculated cruelty stole 6 years from a mother and her daughter, we need to go back to before the fracture, back to the night Donna Green fell in love with a man who would one day stand on a stage and break her heart without ever knowing he was doing it. This is a story about the lies we survive and the truths that almost destroy us. It is a story about a woman who built a $190 million empire from grief that turned out to be manufactured. It is about a man who raised a daughter alone because he believed the woman he loved was buried in a cemetery in Los Angeles. And it is about a 5-year-old girl with a gap-toothed smile and a stuffed elephant named Gerald, who walked into a conference room one afternoon and changed absolutely everything. Donna Green met Stephen Ramos at a tech startup mixer in Oakland in the fall of 2012. She was 25 years old, working as a product designer at a mid-tier firm that paid well enough and bored her completely. He was 27, running a company out of a rented garage with 3 employees, a whiteboard covered in equations nobody else understood, and the kind of reckless, unpolished ambition that made venture capitalists nervous and Donna inexplicably curious. She noticed him before he noticed her, not because he was handsome, though he was, but because he was arguing with a man twice his age about cloud infrastructure with the intensity of someone defending a religious conviction. His tie was crooked, his shoes were scuffed. His pitch deck, which she picked up off a table after he walked away, had a formatting error on the 3rd slide and a fatal flaw in its financial projections. She found him 20 minutes later, standing alone near the bar, nursing a drink he clearly was not enjoying and scanning the room like he was trying to calculate the exit velocity required to leave without being noticed. "Your financial projections are wrong," Donna said, holding up the pitch deck. "You have your customer acquisition cost at $12 per user, but your conversion funnel assumes a 30% retention rate after month 1. Industry standard is closer to 18%. At 18%, your cost per retained user is almost double what you are showing investors, which means either you are being optimistic or you are being dishonest. And based on your shoes, I am guessing optimistic." Stephen stared at her. Then he looked down at his shoes. Then he looked back at her. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who reads pitch decks more carefully than you write them," Donna replied. "Fix the retention assumption, drop it to 20% and recalculate your break-even timeline. It will push your profitability out by 8 months, but at least it will be real. Investors can smell fantasy math. They will respect you more for showing them the hard version." Stephen took the pitch deck from her hands, flipped to the third page, and studied it for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not the polished, practiced smile of a man trying to charm an investor. A real smile. The kind that starts in surprise and ends in gratitude. "You just saved me from walking into a room full of people and lying to them," he said. "Can I buy you a drink? Or dinner? Or possibly hire you?" Donna did not let him buy her dinner that night. She let him buy her coffee 3 days later at a shop near her office. The conversation lasted 4 hours. He talked about his vision for Ramos Capital, a technology platform that would democratize financial tools for small businesses. She talked about design philosophy, about how the best products were not the most complex, but the most intuitive, the ones that understood their users better than the users understood themselves. They did not talk about feelings. They talked about ideas. And somewhere between the second cup of coffee and the 4th hour, Donna realized that she had never met anyone who made her brain work harder or her guard drop faster. Stephen did not try to impress her. He tried to understand her. And in Donna's experience, those were 2 very different things. They dated for a year before he proposed. The proposal was not extravagant. He did not rent a helicopter or buy a billboard or stage a public spectacle. He cooked her dinner in his apartment, burned the chicken, served it anyway, and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life arguing with someone who makes me smarter. Will you marry me?" She said yes. Not because it was romantic, though it was, in its own imperfect way. She said yes because she believed him. Because in a year of watching this man work 18-hour days and still show up at her door at midnight to tell her about a breakthrough or a failure, she had learned that Stephen Ramos did not say things he did not mean. His words were his currency, and he spent them carefully. The wedding was small. 30 people on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Donna's mother cried. Stephen's business partner gave a toast that was too long and too honest. Donna wore a dress she designed herself, simple white cotton with hand-stitched wildflowers along the hem, because she believed beautiful things should also be real things. Stephen wore a suit that fit properly for the first time in his life, because Donna had taken him to a tailor and refused to marry a man whose jacket bunched at the shoulders. They were happy. Genuinely, boringly, wonderfully happy. For 3 years. The first crack appeared the way first cracks always do. Not dramatically, not with arguments or slammed doors, but with absence. Stephen's company, Ramos Capital, exploded from a garage. Startup into a legitimate contender. Series of funding. Series B. Then Series C, which brought in $140 million and a new chief financial officer named Nolan Voss. Donna met Voss at the office holiday party and disliked him within 90 seconds. It was not anything he said. His words were perfectly calibrated, polite, professional, appropriately flattering. It was what lived behind his eyes. A coldness, a calculation. He watched rooms the way a chess player watches a board, cataloging positions, evaluating weaknesses, planning moves that would not become visible until it was too late to counter them. "I do not trust him," Donna told Stephen that night in bed. "There is something wrong with how he looks at people, like he is measuring them for coffins." Stephen laughed. "He does not look at people like that. He is just analytical. It is what makes him brilliant with numbers. He restructured our debt model in 2 weeks and saved us $11 million. He is the best financial mind I have ever worked with. Being good with numbers does not make someone trustworthy, Stephen. Some of the most dangerous people in history were excellent with math." "You are being dramatic," he said, kissing her forehead. "Voss is fine. He is an asset." Donna let it go. She let it go because she loved her husband and trusted his judgment, and because at 29 years old, she still believed that loving someone meant choosing their perspective over your own discomfort. She would learn eventually that love and discernment were not opposites, that trusting your partner did not require silencing your instincts. But she would learn that lesson the hardest possible way. The pregnancy arrived like a sunrise. Slow, then sudden, then everywhere. Donna found out on a Tuesday morning. She took 3 tests because the first 2 seemed impossible. Then she sat on the bathroom floor and cried, not from sadness, but from the sheer magnitude of what was happening inside her body. A life, an actual human life, building itself cell by cell from the blueprint she and Stephen had created together. She told him that evening. She had planned something elaborate, a dinner, a speech, a moment she could photograph and frame. Instead, she walked into the kitchen where he was reading quarterly reports, held up the test and said, "We are having a baby." Stephen looked at the test. Then he looked at her. Then he put his head down on the kitchen table and cried. Not quiet, dignified tears. Full-body sobs that shook his shoulders and made the quarterly reports flutter off the table. Donna had never seen him cry before. She stood behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders and held him while he fell apart from joy. They picked a name that night. Lucia. It meant light. Stephen said it sounded like a beginning. Donna said it sounded like a promise. The nursery took shape over the following weeks. Soft yellow walls, a white crib, a mobile of small silver stars that caught the light and scattered it across the ceiling like tiny constellations. Donna painted a mural on one wall, a garden scene, flowers and butterflies, and a single golden sun rising above green hills. She spent 3 weekends on it, standing on a stepladder with a paintbrush, talking to the baby she could not yet feel but already loved with a ferocity that surprised her. But underneath the joy, something was shifting. Stephen came home later. His phone rang at odd hours. He took calls in rooms Donna was not in and spoke in tones she could not quite hear. When she asked about it, he blamed the IPO preparation. The company was going public within the year and the pressure was immense. Every detail mattered. Every number had to be perfect. Voss needs me on these calls, Stephen explained. He is restructuring the offering documents. It is technical and boring, and I promise you, everything is fine. Is it? Donna asked, not because she doubted him, but because the shape of his reassurance felt hollow, like a word, repeated so many times it loses meaning. Of course, I promise you, everything is fine. Everything was not fine. At 31 weeks, Donna's routine blood work came back wrong. Her blood pressure had spiked. Protein levels in her urine were elevated. The doctor used a word that sounded clinical and controlled, preeclampsia, but his face told a different story. Immediate hospitalization, bed rest, close monitoring. The baby was healthy, but small. Donna's body was beginning to turn against itself. Stephen was terrified. Donna could see it in his jaw, in the way his hands gripped the arms of the hospital chair, in the texts he sent every hour when work forced him to leave her side. He showed up every evening with food she could not eat and magazines she could not focus on, and sat beside her bed, making promises that both of them were desperately trying to believe. You are going to be fine, he said, holding her hand. Both of you. This is a precaution. Doctors are careful because it is their job to be careful. You'll be home in a week. And if I am not, Donna said quietly, if something goes wrong, nothing is going to go wrong. Stephen, look at me. If something goes wrong, I need you to take care of her. Whatever happens, you take care of Lucia. Stephen's eyes filled. Nothing is going to go wrong, he repeated, but his voice had lost its conviction. He sounded like a man trying to hold back the ocean with his hands. 4 days later, on a Thursday evening, Stephen received a call from Nolan Voss. A board emergency, a critical vote that required his presence, signatures that could not be delegated. Stephen paced the hospital corridor, phone pressed to his ear, torn between the woman in the bed and the company that had become an organism he could not control. Go, Donna told him from the doorway of her room. He had not realized she was watching. I am stable. The monitors are steady. Go handle your business and come back. I do not want to leave you. I know, but this is important, and I will be right here when you get back. He kissed her forehead. He kissed her belly. He said he would be back by midnight. Then he walked down the corridor and out of the hospital and drove toward the Ramos Capital offices where Nolan Voss was waiting with a crisis that may or may not have been manufactured. 40 minutes after Stephen left, Donna's blood pressure crashed. Alarms sounded. Nurses ran. The doctor appeared with a face that had lost all pretense of clinical calm and said words that blurred together in Donna's memory because the pain was too enormous to allow for language. Emergency cesarean. Now. The baby has to come out now. Donna remembers the fluorescent lights of the operating room. She remembers the cold of the table. She remembers asking for Stephen and being told he was not answering his phone. She remembers the anesthesiologist counting backward from 10 and reaching 7 before the world disappeared. She does not remember the transfer. She does not remember being moved, mid-surgery, from the hospital where Stephen knew she was to a different facility 14 miles away. She does not remember the ambulance ride or the paperwork that was filed authorizing the transfer, paperwork signed by a Dr. Julian Price, a man who was not her doctor and had no surgical credentials and whose name would not mean anything to her for another 6 years. She does not remember any of it. Because she was unconscious. Because someone had decided, with cold and deliberate precision, that Donna Ramos needed to disappear. She woke up in a room she did not recognize. The ceiling was different. The curtains were different. The quality of light coming through the window was wrong, angled differently than her hospital room, hitting the wall at a slant that told her she was not where she was supposed to be. She was alone. The monitors beside her beeped in steady, indifferent rhythms. Her abdomen was bandaged. Her body felt like it had been emptied of everything that mattered. The first thought was the baby. Where is Lucia? Where is my daughter? She tried to sit up, and the pain knocked her flat. She pressed the call button. She pressed it again. She pressed it 11 times before a nurse appeared, a woman she had never seen, with kind eyes and a name tag from a hospital Donna had never heard of. "Where is my baby?" Donna said, and her voice did not sound like her own. It sounded like something being torn. The nurse hesitated. Then she left. Then a doctor appeared. Not the doctor who had been monitoring her pregnancy. Not anyone she recognized. A man in a white coat with a clipboard and an expression that had been arranged into something resembling sympathy, but was too precise, too rehearsed to be genuine. "Mrs. Ramos," he said, and the way he said her name made her understand before the words that followed. "I am Dr. Price. I am deeply sorry to tell you that your daughter did not survive the delivery. Complications during the cesarean resulted in fetal distress. The medical team did everything possible, but the infant could not be resuscitated. I am very sorry for your loss." The words entered Donna's body like bullets, each one finding a different organ. She heard them. She understood them. And something inside her, something fundamental to who she was as a human being, shattered so completely that she would spend 6 years trying to reassemble the pieces without ever finding them all. She screamed. Not a word, not a name, a sound that came from somewhere below language, below thought, below everything she had ever been. A sound that nurses 3 floors away would later say they heard through closed doors and concrete walls. The sound a mother makes when the thing she was built to protect has been taken from her. She asked for Stephen. No one could reach him. His phone went to voicemail. She called his office. No answer. She called his personal assistant. Voicemail. She lay in that unfamiliar bed, in that unfamiliar hospital, and called every number she had memorized and reached no one. She was alone with a grief so vast it had its own gravity, pulling everything inside her toward a center that was nothing but absence. Hours passed. Then a day. Stephen did not come. Stephen did not call. And Donna, in the wreckage of her body and her hope, began to construct the only explanation that made sense to a woman who had just lost everything. He was not here because he did not want to be. The late nights, the phone calls, the distance she had felt growing for months, it all pointed in one direction. He had already moved on. She just had not been paying attention. On the second morning, the nurse with kind eyes came to her bedside. The nurse whose name Donna would never remember, but whose face she would never forget. The woman held up her phone with hands that trembled slightly and said, "Mrs. Ramos, I think you need to watch this." The clip was 93 seconds long. The Pinnacle Tech Gala, San Francisco. A ballroom full of crystal and ambition and people who measured their worth in zeros. And there, at a podium, in a charcoal Tom Ford suit with his dark hair swept back and his jaw set with the authority of a man who owned the room, stood Stephen Ramos. He was holding a baby, a newborn, wrapped in white linen, cradled against his chest with a tenderness that reached through the phone screen and wrapped itself around Donna's throat. "I want to be honest with the world tonight," Stephen said into the microphone, his voice carrying that low, measured cadence that had once whispered promises into Donna's hair in the dark. "My marriage is over. This child is my future, my only priority. Everything else falls away." A woman stood beside him. Tall, dark-haired, composed. Her hand rested on Stephen's shoulder with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged there. The audience applauded. The cameras flashed. 14 million people watched a billionaire announce the death of his marriage while holding a newborn child, and the world moved on to the next headline. Donna did not move on. She watched the clip 47 times. She counted. Each viewing revealed a new detail. The way he held the baby, not awkwardly, not like a man unfamiliar with the weight of an infant. He held that child like he had been holding her for days. The woman beside him, comfortable, proprietary, her fingers resting on his shoulder like they had been there before. His face, not grief, not remorse, composure, control, the face of a man making an announcement he had rehearsed. Her baby was dead, but he was holding a baby, a living, breathing baby that he called his future. The math was not complicated. Donna did not need a calculator. She needed only the evidence of her own eyes and the wreckage of her own body. Stephen had another child, another woman, another life that had been running parallel to hers, hidden behind late-night calls and board emergencies, and the elaborate fiction of a man who said everything is fine while everything was ending. She was wrong. She was catastrophically, fundamentally, life-alteringly wrong. But she did not know that. She would not know that for 6 years. And by the time she learned the truth, she would have built an entire empire on the foundation of a lie she never told and never chose and never questioned. Because why would she question it? The evidence was on the screen. The doctor had told her the baby died. Her husband had not come. The divorce papers arrived the next day. 26 pages, delivered by a courier in a gray suit who would not meet her eyes. Every clause was surgical. Every provision was calculated. The financial settlement offered her enough money to survive, but not enough to matter, as though 8 years of marriage had a clearance price. As though love could be liquidated like stock options. Donna read every page. She read them the way she had read Stephen's pitch deck the night they met, analytically, looking for flaws, for hidden assumptions, for the fatal error that would reveal the truth behind the numbers. But these numbers were clean. These numbers told a simple story. Stephen Ramos was done. He was offering her an exit with enough money to disappear quietly and enough legal language to ensure she never caused him trouble. She signed them. She signed them from that hospital bed with a pen the courier provided and hands that had stopped shaking because something inside her had calcified. Not healed, calcified. The way bones do when they break and there is no doctor to set them properly. They fuse in the wrong position. They hold weight but never move correctly again. She called her mother. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. "Come home, baby," her mother said. "Come home and let me take care of you." "I do not have a home anymore," Donna replied. "Then build one," her mother said. "You have always been better at building than anyone I know." Donna hung up. She stared at the ceiling. She made a decision that would define the next 6 years of her life. She would leave. Not just this hospital, not just this city, but this version of herself. The woman who trusted. The woman who loved without conditions. The woman who believed that her husband's words were currency and he spent them carefully. That woman was dead. She had died on the same table where her daughter died, in a hospital she never chose, in a city she could not name. Donna Green rose from the ashes. She took her maiden name back like reclaimed territory. She packed what mattered into 2 suitcases. Her grandmother's recipe journals, a silver bracelet her mother had given her on her wedding day, a single ultrasound photo in a sealed envelope she could not open but could not discard. Everything else she left behind, including every memory that had Stephen's fingerprints on it. She left Los Angeles 3 weeks later. No forwarding address, no goodbye, no looking back. Before I continue with what Donna did next, before I tell you how a woman with 2 suitcases and a shattered heart turned devastation into a $190 million empire, I need to pause and talk directly to you. If you are still watching, it is because something about Donna's story has reached through the screen and grabbed you by the chest. Maybe you know what it feels like to have your reality rewritten by someone else. Maybe you have been in that hospital bed, metaphorically or literally, watching the person you trusted most walk away on a screen. Maybe you are just someone who believes that the worst chapter should never be the last chapter. Whatever brought you here, I need you to know that your presence matters. Every like, every share, every comment telling me your own story of survival or heartbreak or impossible strength, it all matters. It is what makes Mr. Dawson Stories more than just a channel. It is a community of people who believe in real, messy, complicated human stories. So if you are feeling this, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that destruction is not a destination. It is a starting point. Subscribe if you have not already, because trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Now, let me tell you how Donna Green drove north and built a kingdom from nothing. She drove up the Pacific Coast Highway with no destination and no plan. Just 2 suitcases in the trunk and an ocean on her left that stretched to the horizon like a promise she no longer believed in. She talked to Lucia as she drove, out loud, to the daughter who was not there. She described the coastline, the way the cliffs dropped into the water, the color of the sky at 4 in the afternoon when the light turned everything gold. "You would have loved this," she said to the empty passenger seat. "The ocean looks like it goes on forever. I would have taught you to swim in it. I would have taught you everything." She stopped in small towns along the way, ate in diners where the waitresses called her honey and refilled her coffee without asking, slept in motels where the sheets smelled like bleach and the walls were thin enough to hear strangers living their ordinary lives on the other side. She was shedding her identity mile by mile, peeling away Mrs. Ramos like dead skin, peeling away the woman who had decorated a nursery in soft yellows and whites, peeling away everything until what remained was raw and unrecognizable and entirely her own. She reached Cambria by accident. The fuel light came on, and the next exit led to a town she had never heard of, population 6,000, tucked against the coast like something hiding from the rest of the world. Fog rolled in from the ocean every evening like a blanket being pulled over the shoulders of the earth. The air smelled like salt and eucalyptus. The streets were quiet in the way that small towns are quiet, not from emptiness, but from the kind of peace that comes when people have decided that being somewhere specific matters more than being somewhere important. She pulled into a gas station, filled the tank, and through the window of the building across the street she saw a sign in a bakery window. "Help wanted." She walked in. The bakery was small and warm and smelled like butter and flour and something else she could not name but recognized as comfort. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with silver hair and flour-dusted hands and eyes that had clearly seen enough of life to stop being surprised by anything. The woman looked at Donna for a long moment, not at her clothes or her suitcases visible through the window or the hollowness behind her eyes. She looked at Donna the way you look at a stray animal that has wandered onto your porch, not with pity, with recognition. "You look like you need bread, not a job," the woman said. "I need both," Donna replied. The woman's name was Serafina. She was 73 years old. She had owned the bakery for 41 years. She had buried a husband, raised 4 children, and survived a fire that destroyed the original building in 1994. She rebuilt it with insurance money and stubbornness and the unshakable belief that the world always needed bread, especially when everything else was falling apart. She hired Donna without asking for a resume or references or an explanation of why a woman with designer luggage and haunted eyes was looking for work in a bakery in a town that most people drove through without stopping. "Can you wake up at 4 in the morning?" Serafina asked. "I do not sleep much anyway," Donna replied. "Good. Then you will start tomorrow. I will teach you dough. Dough does not care about your problems. It needs specific temperature, specific pressure, specific timing. You give it those things and it becomes something beautiful. You neglect it and it collapses. There is a lesson in that, if you pay attention." Donna paid attention. She learned to wake in darkness and arrive at the bakery when the streets were empty and the only sounds were the ocean and the hum of the ovens warming. She learned that bread making was not cooking. It was chemistry and patience and the willingness to trust a process you could not rush. She learned that kneading dough required the same muscles as grief, the hands, the shoulders, the core, the part of the body that holds everything together when the mind cannot. She rented the cottage behind the bakery, a single room with a bed, a stove, and a window that looked out onto a garden Serafina maintained with the same discipline she applied to her sourdough starter. Donna unpacked her 2 suitcases. She hung her grandmother's recipe journals on a hook by the door. She placed the silver bracelet on the windowsill where it caught the morning light. She put the sealed envelope with the ultrasound photo in the drawer of the nightstand and closed it. She did not open that drawer for 3 years. The first year in Cambria passed in a rhythm that was less living than surviving. Wake, bake, sell, walk, sleep, wake again. The days were identical. The weeks blurred. Donna avoided television, news, social media, anything that might show her Stephen's face or remind her of the life she had amputated. She created a blackout around her former existence so complete that she might as well have entered witness protection. The grief did not leave. It moved in permanently, setting up residence in a room inside her chest that she learned to walk past without opening the door. Some mornings, the door rattled. She would feel a phantom kick in her abdomen, a muscle memory of Lucia moving inside her, and the pain would drop her to her knees on the bakery floor, while Serafina stood quietly nearby, not helping, not hovering, just present. Witnessing, because Serafina understood that some pain cannot be fixed. It can only be survived in the company of someone who does not look away. Some nights, the door swung wide while Donna slept. She would wake gasping, reaching for a baby that was not there, her arms empty and aching with a weight that had no physical source. She would lie in the dark and listen to the ocean and talk to Lucia in whispers that the walls absorbed and kept. "I made bread today," she would say. "Serafina says my sourdough is getting better. She says I have good hands. I think she is just being kind, but maybe not. Maybe I have good hands. You would have liked the bread. I would have taught you how to make it. I would have taught you everything." And then Vera appeared. Vera Cortez was a marine biologist who worked at a research station 3 miles up the coast. She was 32 years old, 5'3", with a laugh like a foghorn and an absolute refusal to accept social boundaries that other people considered normal. She came into the bakery every morning at 7:15 for a croissant and a black coffee, and from the first day, she decided that Donna Green was someone who needed to be talked to whether she wanted to be talked to or not. "You are new here," Vera said on the first morning, leaning against the counter with the easy posture of someone who had never met a stranger. "Yes," Donna replied, handing her the croissant. "That will be $4.50. Where are you from?" "Somewhere else." "That is vague." "I like vague people. They are usually interesting. What is your name?" "Donna." "Hi, Donna. I am Vera. I study kelp forests." Which sounds boring, but is actually fascinating because kelp is the foundation of the entire coastal ecosystem, and without it, everything dies. Kind of like bread. Without bread, everything dies. See, we have something in common already. Donna stared at her. "I really just want to sell you the croissant. And I really just want someone to talk to at 7:15 in the morning who is not a sea urchin. We both have needs, Donna. This can work." It worked. Not immediately, not easily, but with the persistent, gradual force of water wearing down stone. Vera came every morning. She talked whether Donna responded or not. She talked about kelp and ocean currents and the mating habits of sea otters, which were apparently far more dramatic than anyone would expect. She talked about her own life, her divorce, her move to Cambria, the way starting over in a small town felt like both a retreat and a reclamation. And slowly, across weeks and then months, Donna began to talk back. Not about Stephen, not about Lucia, not about the broadcast or the hospital or the sealed envelope in the nightstand drawer, but about small things, the texture of a particularly good loaf, the color of the fog on a Tuesday, the way Serafina hummed Portuguese folk songs while she shaped rolls, and how the melody had started appearing in Donna's dreams. Vera listened with the same attention she brought to her research. Carefully, seriously, understanding that the data Donna was sharing was incomplete and that the missing variables were not hers to demand. One evening, 6 months after they met, Vera showed up at Donna's cottage with a bottle of wine and a refusal to leave. "I know something happened to you," Vera said, sitting on the cottage steps. "I do not know what. I am not asking you to tell me, but I need you to know that I see you. I see that you are carrying something enormous and you are carrying it alone, and I am telling you right now that I am not going to let you disappear into it. You can push me away. You can refuse to talk. You can pretend you are fine. But I will be here at 7:15 every morning and on this step every evening until you understand that whatever happened to you does not get to decide that you are alone." Donna sat beside her on the step. She did not speak for a long time. The fog rolled in. The ocean filled the silence. "My daughter died," Donna finally said. It was the first time she had spoken the words aloud since leaving Los Angeles. "And my husband replaced us both on national television." Vera did not gasp, or cry, or offer platitudes. She put her arm around Donna's shoulder and held her, and the two of them sat on that step while the fog erased the world around them. And Donna wept for the first time since the hospital. Not the screaming, violent grief of those first days. A quieter grief. The kind that comes when you finally feel safe enough to stop being strong. Their friendship became Donna's anchor, the single point of connection in a life she had otherwise sealed off from human contact. Vera was the only person who knew where Donna came from, the only person allowed inside the walls. And Vera, to her credit, never tried to tear the walls down. She simply stood inside them, keeping Donna company in the fortress she had built, waiting for the day Donna might decide to open a door. That door cracked open in the most unexpected way. During her walks along the cliffs, Donna had started foraging. Not intentionally. She simply noticed things. The wild lavender that grew in thick clusters near the trail, the sea kelp that washed ashore after storms, dense and mineral-rich, the coastal sage that released its scent when she brushed past it, sharp and clean and alive. She began collecting. At first just to have something in her hands during those long walks, something to carry besides grief. She brought the plants home and laid them on her kitchen counter and studied them the way she had once studied design specifications, analytically, looking for structure, for function, for hidden utility. Her product design background was not dead. It had only been sleeping, and now it woke up in her hands as she crushed lavender between her fingers and wondered about its properties. As she researched sea kelp and discovered its concentration of minerals, its capacity for hydration, its cellular structure that mimicked human skin. As she began, late at night when sleep would not come, to experiment, the first batch of moisturizer was mixed on her kitchen counter at midnight, lavender and sea kelp and jojoba oil, and something else, a quality she could not name but recognized as care. She was not building a business. She was filling the hours between 10 at night and 4 in the morning, when the darkness pressed against the windows and the sealed envelope in the nightstand drawer seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. She cried while she mixed. The tears dropped into the bowl, and she did not wipe them away. She thought absurdly that maybe the salt of her grief would become part of the formula. Maybe the product would carry something of her in it. Maybe that was the point. The next morning she brought a jar to the bakery and left it on the counter, unlabeled, beside the register. Serafina picked it up, opened it, smelled it, applied it to the back of her hand. "This is good," Serafina said simply. "What is it?" "I do not know yet," Donna replied. "Something I made. Make more. I will sell it here. $12 a jar. If it is as good as it smells, people will buy it." People bought it. The first batch sold out in 2 days. Donna made more. It sold out again. She made more. It sold out faster. Something was happening. Something that felt less like commerce and more like communication, like the product was saying something she could not say with words, and the people who bought it heard the message. Vera was the first to name it. "You know what you are doing, right?" she said one evening, watching Donna fill jars at her kitchen table. "You are building something." "I am just making moisturizer," Donna said. "No," Vera replied. "You are building something. The same way you built bread. The same way you built yourself back from nothing. You see a raw material and you turn it into something that nourishes people. That is not a hobby, Donna. That is a calling." Donna looked at the jars on her table. 12 of them, unlabeled, filled with something she had made from coastal plants and midnight tears and the stubborn refusal to let grief be the only thing she produced. "Green and gold botanicals," she said quietly. "What? The name? Green and gold botanicals. Green for the plants. Gold for the light on the cliffs in the afternoon. I love it," Vera said. "Now put it on a label and stop selling it for $12. It is worth at least $30. Donna put it on a label. She did not raise the price, not yet, but she started thinking about scale, about distribution, about what it would mean to take this thing she had made in the dark and bring it into the light. And, for the first time in 2 years, Donna Green thought about the future without flinching. She launched Green and Gold Botanicals at a farmer's market in San Luis Obispo on a Saturday morning in March. A folding table, hand-labeled jars, no marketing budget, no business plan, no safety net, just product and the stubborn belief that if something was good enough, people would find it. They found it. Within 3 hours, she was sold out. Within a week, she had orders she could not fill. Within a month, a beauty editor from a niche magazine visited Cambria on vacation, bought a jar from Serafina's bakery counter, tried it that evening in her hotel room, and wrote a 1,200-word feature that described the moisturizer as transcendent, a product that feels like it was made by someone who understands skin the way a poet understands language. The article went viral. Orders flooded in from every state. Donna's kitchen table was no longer sufficient. Her cottage was no longer sufficient. The life she had built as a shelter was no longer sufficient. She stood at a crossroads. She could stay small, stay safe, stay hidden in Cambria where nobody knew her former name and nobody asked questions she did not want to answer. Staying small meant control. Staying small meant the walls stayed intact. Or she could scale. Scaling meant exposure, visibility, the possibility that someone, somewhere, might connect Donna Green to the woman who had once been Donna Ramos. The possibility that the past she had sealed away would leak through the cracks. She scaled, because the alternative was stagnation, and stagnation felt too much like the sealed envelope in the nightstand drawer. A thing preserved, but never opened. A thing kept safe but never lived. She secured a small business loan, hired her first 3 employees, moved production from her kitchen to a rented facility on the outskirts of town. She learned supply chain management from YouTube tutorials and library books, and the kind of relentless, self-taught education that only happens when failure is not theoretical but personal. The setbacks came. They always do. A supplier went bankrupt 3 weeks before the holiday season, threatening her entire winter line. She found a new supplier in 48 hours, sleeping 2 hours a night and making phone calls from the production floor while her employees packed orders around her. A large retailer offered distribution but demanded she reformulate with cheaper ingredients to protect their margins. She refused, walked out of the meeting, found 3 independent boutiques that same week who wanted the product exactly as it was. A competitor copied her signature serum and undercut her price by 40%. Donna did not panic. She did not retaliate. She released a limited edition formulation using a strain of sea kelp that only grew in the tidal pools below Cambria's cliffs, hand-harvested, small batch, impossible to replicate. It sold out in 6 hours and generated a waitlist of 4,000 names. Each challenge tested her. Each one she survived made her sharper, harder, more certain that she would never be caught unprepared again. She was not just building a company. She was building proof. Proof that she could be dismantled and reassembled. Proof that the worst thing that ever happened to her was not the last thing. Proof that Donna Green did not need Stephen Ramos or his money or his name or his love to be someone worth being. In the 3rd year, she launched the foundation, not a charity, an investment. Business grants for women rebuilding after personal devastation, mentorship programs, networking events, a community of women who understood that survival was a skill set, not a sentiment, and that the scars you carried were not weaknesses but credentials. She named it the Green Light Foundation because green meant go, green meant growth, green meant permission to start again. By the 5th year, Donna Green stood on the cover of Inc. magazine. The photograph showed her on the cliffs above Cambria, the ocean behind her, her expression calm and certain and giving nothing away. The headline read, "From Nothing to Everything, How Donna Green Built a Skincare Empire on the Edge of the World." The valuation was $190 million, 280 employees, distribution in 4 countries, an 11-month wait list for the flagship serum. The foundation had funded 67 women-owned businesses across 12 states. The interviewer asked her about resilience, about building with intention, about the philosophy behind a brand that had gone from a kitchen counter to a global presence in less than 5 years. Donna answered every question with precision and warmth, and the practiced openness of a woman who had learned to share exactly as much as she chose and no more. She did not mention Stephen Ramos. She did not mention a baby. She did not mention a broadcast or a hospital or a sealed envelope that still sat in a nightstand drawer in a cottage she no longer lived in but refused to sell. Her past was a locked room, and she had swallowed the key. But the cover of Inc. magazine meant something she had not anticipated. It meant visibility. Her face was now in every airport bookstore, every doctor's waiting room, every digital newsstand in America. She had spent 5 years disappearing, and now, in the space of a single photograph, she had become findable. She did not know it yet, but that photograph would travel across the country and eventually reach the desk of a man who had spent 23 months looking for her. A man who had hired 4 investigative teams and written 11 letters and buried an empty casket and raised a daughter alone because he believed, with the same certainty that Donna believed in his betrayal, that the woman he loved was dead. The photograph would find Stephen Ramos, and when it did, it would set in motion the unraveling of the most elaborate lie either of them had ever been told. But that was still ahead of her. For now, Donna stood on her cliffside deck in the house she had bought with her own money, watching the fog roll in, and she felt something she had learned to call contentment. Not happiness, contentment. A word that meant everything was stable, manageable, under control. A word that meant the walls were intact and the doors were locked and nobody could reach her unless she allowed it. Vera sat beside her, as she often did on evenings when the fog came early. "You should be celebrating," Vera said. "Inc. magazine. That is not nothing." "I am celebrating," Donna replied. "This is what celebrating looks like now. Quiet, controlled, a glass of wine, and a view I paid for myself. That is not celebrating. That is guarding. Maybe guarding and celebrating look the same to me now." Vera turned to face her. You know I love you. You know I would never push you somewhere you do not want to go. But I need to say something, and I need you to actually hear it. Say it. You are not protecting yourself, Donna. You are punishing yourself. You are punishing yourself for trusting someone who did not deserve it, and the punishment is a life where nobody is ever allowed close enough to matter. You built an empire. You employ hundreds of people. You fund women's futures. And you go home every night to an empty house and call it enough. It is enough. Is it? Or is it just safe? Because safe and enough are not the same thing, and you know that. You have always known that. Donna did not answer. She stared at the ocean, which offered no opinions, and she let Vera's words settle over her like a weight she was not ready to carry but could not put down. Maybe, she thought, maybe safe was not enough. Maybe contentment was just loneliness wearing a better outfit. Maybe the walls she had built so carefully were not protecting her from pain but from possibility. But those were dangerous thoughts. And Donna Green had learned, the hardest possible way, what happened when you let dangerous thoughts lead you to dangerous people. So she finished her wine. She said goodnight to Vera. She went inside and locked her door and checked her phone and saw nothing from anyone because there was no one to hear from. And she went to bed in her beautiful empty house on the edge of the world and dreamed of a nursery painted in soft yellows, a mobile of silver stars catching the light, a garden mural on the wall with flowers and butterflies, and a single golden sun rising above green hills. She woke at 4 a.m. She did not cry. She made coffee. She went to work. She built her empire another inch higher. And 600 miles away in Los Angeles, a man she had erased from her life opened a copy of Inc. magazine, saw her face on the cover, and dropped to his knees on the kitchen floor, while a 5-year-old girl with her mother's amber eyes stood in the doorway and said, "Daddy, why are you crying?" "Because I found her," Stephen whispered. "I found her. She is alive." The magazine sat open on Stephen Ramos's kitchen floor for 3 days. He could not bring himself to close it. Every time he walked past, he stopped and looked at her face and felt the same collision of joy and devastation that had knocked him to his knees the first time he saw it. She was alive. Donna was alive. 5 years. 5 years of waking up alone in a house that still smelled like her perfume, because he could not bring himself to wash the pillowcase she had last slept on. 5 years of raising Lucia by himself, learning to braid hair from YouTube tutorials, sitting in the front row of preschool recitals with an empty seat beside him that he could not look at without his chest caving in. 5 years of therapy and grief counseling, and the slow grinding work of teaching himself to function inside a life that had been hollowed out like a gourd. He had buried her. He had stood in a room with an empty casket because there was no body. The hospital told him there had been complications during the cremation process, that the remains had been mishandled, that they were deeply sorry for the additional trauma. He had accepted every lie because he was drowning in grief and holding a premature infant and trying to remember how to breathe. And when you are trying to remember how to breathe, you do not have the oxygen to question the people who are supposed to be telling you the truth. The discovery had come 23 months before the magazine cover. 23 months of searching that had led nowhere until Donna's face appeared on newsstands across America. It started with a number, a single line item in a financial audit that did not belong. $14,000 paid from a Ramos Capital discretionary fund to a Dr. Julian Price on a date that made Stephen's blood turn to ice. The date of Lucia's birth. The date Donna died. The date he now understood, that everything he believed had been constructed from calculated cruelty. He pulled the thread. The thread became a rope. The rope became a noose, and it was wrapped around the neck of Nolan Voss. The investigation took months. Forensic accountants, private attorneys, quiet conversations with hospital staff who had been transferred or retired or silenced. The picture that emerged was so monstrous that Stephen's first reaction was disbelief. His second reaction was a rage so pure and so total that his therapist later told him it was the closest thing to a psychotic break she had ever witnessed in a patient who remained technically functional. Voss had orchestrated everything. The unauthorized hospital transfer during Donna's emergency cesarean, the falsified death certificate bearing her name, the fabricated story about cremation complications, the divorce papers, prepared by an attorney Voss had retained on Stephen's behalf without Stephen's knowledge or consent, filed during the 72-hour window when Stephen was so shattered by grief that he could not distinguish between documents placed in front of him and the wall. Stephen had never signed those divorce papers. He had never authorized them. He had never known they existed until 23 months ago, when his own investigation uncovered them in a legal file that had been sealed and buried in the records of a law firm Voss controlled. The motive was elegant in its cruelty. With Stephen incapacitated by the simultaneous birth of his daughter and death of his wife, Voss had executed a hostile restructuring of Ramos Capital. Board votes taken during Stephen's bereavement leave. Equity transfers buried in documents Stephen signed without reading because his infant daughter was in the NICU and his wife was supposedly in the ground, and the company felt like the least important thing in the universe. By the time Stephen emerged from the fog of grief and new fatherhood, Voss had consolidated enough control over the company's financial infrastructure to be nearly untouchable. Nearly, but not entirely. Stephen had spent the past 23 months dismantling Voss's architecture, piece by piece. Quietly, methodically, with the patience of a man who understood that justice delayed was still justice, and that the evidence had to be airtight before he could move. But finding Donna, that had been the hardest part. Because Donna Green did not want to be found. She had changed her name, moved to a town with minimal digital footprint, built a company under a brand name with no obvious connection to her former identity. She had disappeared so thoroughly that 4 separate investigative teams, funded by a man with virtually unlimited resources, had failed to locate her. He wrote letters, 11 of them, sent to every address his investigators identified as a possible connection. Former colleagues, old friends, the hospital in Los Angeles where she had originally been admitted. Each letter returned unopened or undelivered. Each one a message in a bottle thrown into an ocean that refused to carry it to shore. And then the magazine cover, her face, her real name, Donna Green, Cambria, California. He found her. He sent the 12th letter to her business address, the Green and Gold Botanicals headquarters in Cambria. He wrote it by hand because typed words felt too distant for what he needed to say. He wrote it at his kitchen table at 2 a.m. while Lucia slept down the hall, and every sentence cost him something he did not know he had left to spend. The letter said what needed to be said, that he was told she died, that Lucia was alive, that everything Donna believed about what happened was built on a lie neither of them had chosen. He mailed it the next morning. Then he waited. Waiting was the worst part, because Stephen Ramos had spent 5 years believing his wife was dead, and now he knew she was alive, and she was 600 miles away, and she almost certainly hated him, and he could not call her or show up at her door or do any of the things his body was screaming at him to do, because he understood, with a clarity that only comes from years of therapy, that a woman who had been through what Donna had been through needed to choose this meeting on her own terms. He could not force it. He could not buy it. He could only offer it and wait. 3 weeks passed. Each day felt like a year. Then his phone rang. A number he did not recognize. A woman's voice he did not know. "Mr. Ramos, this is the law office of Catherine Daly in San Luis Obispo. I am calling on behalf of a client who wishes to arrange a meeting with you regarding the contents of a letter received on October 14th. My client has conditions for this meeting. Would you like to hear them?" "Yes," Stephen said. "Whatever she needs. Whatever the conditions are. Yes." In Cambria, 600 miles north, Donna held the phone away from her ear and listened to her attorney relay Stephen's agreement. She stood in her office at Green and Gold Botanicals, surrounded by the empire she had built from grief and midnight tears and the refusal to be destroyed, and she felt nothing she could name. Not relief, not fear, not hope. Something beneath all of those things. Something tectonic. The feeling of a fault line shifting deep underground, the kind of movement that does not show on the surface until the earthquake arrives. She had burned the letter. She had watched the cream paper curl into ash over her kitchen sink and felt the heat on her face and told herself it was a lie. A manipulation timed to her rising profile. Stephen had found out about the company, the valuation, the upcoming IPO preparation. He wanted back in. This was what powerful men did. They rewrote history when there was money involved. She had called Vera immediately, her voice flat, her words clinical. "He is lying," she said. "It is manipulation." Vera had listened, and then Vera had asked a question that cracked something open inside Donna's chest. "In 6 years, did you ever actually see a death certificate for Lucia? Did you ever see a body? Did anyone ever give you proof?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound Donna had ever heard, because the answer was no. In the chaos and the grief and the pain and the unfamiliar hospital and the doctor she had never met and the nurse with kind eyes who showed her a 93-second clip on a phone, Nobody had ever shown her proof. She had believed because she was told. She had believed because the alternative, that her daughter was alive and in the arms of the man she loved, was too cruel to examine if it meant that man had stolen her child. But what if neither version was true? What if the truth was something she had never considered because she was too broken to question the story she was given? She hired a private investigator through her attorney. Discreetly, carefully. She wanted verification before she would consider any meeting. She wanted facts, not feelings. She had learned, at extraordinary cost, that feelings were unreliable narrators. The investigator's report arrived 10 days later. 27 pages. Donna read them at her desk with the door locked and the blinds drawn, and her hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. The findings were seismic. The hospital transfer during her cesarean was unauthorized. No attending physician had ordered it. No medical justification existed in any record. The transfer paperwork was signed by a single individual, Dr. Julian Price, Administrative Director of Hospital Operations. Not a surgeon, not an obstetrician, an administrator with no medical authority to authorize the transfer of a patient mid-surgery. Nolan Voss made 3 phone calls to Dr. Price's personal cell phone in the 48 hours surrounding Donna's surgery. The calls lasted 7 minutes, 12 minutes, and 23 minutes respectively. A death certificate existed in the state of California's records. It bore the name Donna Ramos. Cause of death listed as complications during emergency cesarean delivery. It was filed the same night as the surgery. Filed by Dr. Julian Price. Donna Ramos was legally dead. Had been legally dead for 6 years. The woman sitting in this office, running a $190 million company, employing 280 people, was, according to the state of California, a ghost. And there was more. The divorce papers she had signed in that hospital bed, the 26 pages she had read with analytical precision looking for hidden assumptions, those papers had been prepared by a law firm that Nolan Voss controlled through a subsidiary. Stephen Ramos's signature did not appear on any version of the filing. The signature on the petitioner's line was a forgery, confirmed by 2 independent handwriting analysts the investigator had consulted. Stephen had never filed for divorce. Stephen had never asked for divorce. Stephen had never known about the divorce. Donna sat in her office for 45 minutes after finishing the report. She did not move. She did not cry. She did not call anyone. She sat perfectly still and felt the architecture of her entire identity shift on its foundation like a building in an earthquake, not collapsing yet but no longer stable, no longer trustworthy. Every wall and beam suddenly suspect. For 6 years she had been Donna Green, the woman who survived betrayal, the woman who built an empire from the ashes of a husband's cruelty, the woman who proved she did not need anyone. Every interview, every speech, every late night in the production facility, every grant she funded through the foundation, all of it was built on a specific narrative. Stephen Ramos destroyed her. She rose anyway. But what if Stephen Ramos had not destroyed her? What if they had both been destroyed by the same person? What if the villain of her story was not the man she married, but the man she had warned her husband about on a night 6 years ago when she said, "I do not trust him. There is something wrong with how he looks at people," and Stephen had laughed and called her dramatic. She had been right. She had been right about Nolan Voss from the beginning, and being right was the loneliest feeling she had ever experienced. She agreed to the meeting. Now, before I tell you what happened in that conference room, before I describe the moment that either validates 6 years of Donna's grief or demolishes it entirely, I need to stop and speak to you directly. If you have made it this far into this story, it is because something about Donna's journey has taken hold of you. Maybe you have been in her position, holding on to a truth that turned out to be a story someone else wrote for you. Maybe you have been Stephen, living inside a grief that the whole world accepted as real because you had no reason to question it. Maybe you are just someone who understands that the most dangerous lies are not the ones we are told by enemies, but the ones we are told by people we trust in moments when we are too broken to ask questions. This is what we do at Mr. Dawson Stories. We tell the stories that other people look away from, the messy ones, the ones that do not fit neatly into categories of hero and villain because real life does not work that way. If you want more stories like this, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. I release new stories every week, and each one is built to make you think and feel and question everything you assumed you knew. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, do you think Donna should believe Stephen? Or do you think this is an elaborate trap? I genuinely want to know. Now, the meeting. She chose the location, a conference room at her attorney's office in San Luis Obispo. Neutral ground, no advantage to either party. Donna arrived 30 minutes early because preparation was control and control was survival. She brought Vera. She brought her attorney. She wore a white blazer she had designed for Green and Gold's executive line and pulled her hair into a low twist and calibrated her expression to reveal absolutely nothing. She was ready for war. She sat at the conference table with Vera on her left and her attorney on her right, 3 chairs facing the door. The room smelled like leather and paper and the particular sterility of spaces designed for difficult conversations. Donna's hands were flat on the table. Her spine was straight. Her breathing was measured. She looked exactly like a woman in complete control, which was precisely the point because inside she was anything but. The door opened at 11 o'clock exactly. Stephen Ramos walked in alone. No attorney, no entourage, no armor except the folder he carried in hands that trembled when he set it on the table. The first thing Donna registered, before the gray at his temples, before the lines around his eyes, before the way his shoulders carried a weight that had nothing to do with the folder, was that he looked hollowed, not broken, hollowed, like someone had reached inside him and removed something structural, something load-bearing, and he had been standing through sheer force of will ever since. He looked like a man who had been grieving for 6 years. Because he had been. Donna, he said. Her name in his mouth was a sound she had spent 6 years training herself to forget. She had succeeded in forgetting it intellectually. Her body had not cooperated. Her body heard his voice and responded with a recognition so immediate and so total that she had to grip the edge of the table to keep her hands from shaking. "Sit down," she said. "You have 30 minutes." Stephen sat. He placed the folder on the table between them. He looked at her for a long moment, and Donna saw something in his eyes that she had not prepared for. She had prepared for arrogance, for manipulation, for the polished confidence of a billionaire who believed money could rewrite any story. What she saw instead was exhaustion, and beneath the exhaustion, a grief so familiar she recognized it the way you recognize your own reflection. It looked exactly like hers. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Stephen began. "I did not agree to see you. I agreed to hear evidence. There is a difference. Present your case, Mr. Ramos. You have 29 minutes. The formality was intentional. A wall built from language. Stephen understood it. He did not push against it. He opened the folder and began. He laid documents across the table the way a prosecutor lays evidence before a jury. Each page a piece of the puzzle, each piece dated, verified, cross-referenced against independent sources. The medical records came first. Donna's admission to Cedars West Medical Center on the night of her emergency cesarean. Her stable condition upon intake. The surgical team assembled and prepared, and then, 40 minutes into the procedure, a transfer order, unauthorized, unsigned by any attending physician. Donna moved from Cedars West to a facility called Pacific Shore Medical, 14 miles away, while she was still under anesthesia. No notification sent to Stephen. No notification sent to Donna's emergency contacts. No record in the Cedars West system explaining why a patient in active surgery was relocated to a different hospital. Stephen arrived at Cedars West 2 hours after leaving for the board meeting. He had tried to call Donna during the drive back. No answer. He assumed she was sleeping. He walked into the maternity ward and asked for her room. The nurse at the desk looked at her screen and then looked at Stephen with an expression he would never forget. Confusion layered over something darker. "Mr. Ramos, I'm going to get the doctor," the nurse said. "Where is my wife?" Stephen replied. "I just want to see my wife." The doctor appeared. Dr. Julian Price, a man Stephen had never met. A man who was not an obstetrician and had no business delivering news about a cesarean delivery. But Stephen did not know that. Stephen was a man whose wife was in this hospital having his baby, and when a doctor in a white coat told him to sit down, he sat down because you trust the coat. You trust the building. You trust the system that is supposed to protect the people you love. "Mr. Ramos, I am deeply sorry. There were complications during the delivery. Your daughter survived. Your wife did not." 7 words. Your wife did not survive. 7 words that ended Stephen Ramos's life as effectively as if they had been a bullet. He did not scream. He did not collapse. He went somewhere inside himself that was beyond noise, beyond reaction, beyond the reach of anything the world could offer. He went to a place where the only sound was the memory of Donna's voice saying, "If something goes wrong, you take care of Lucia." And the only thought was, she knew. She knew she was not coming back. She made me promise because she knew. They brought him the baby 20 minutes later. Lucia, 4 pounds, 11 ounces, premature but stable. Dark curls matted against a head too small for the world. Eyes closed, fists clenched, alive in a way that felt like an accusation, because how could anything be alive when Donna was not? Stephen held his daughter for the first time in a hallway outside a room his wife had never been in a hospital that had lost his wife or stolen her or both, and he did not understand any of it because grief does not allow for understanding. Grief only allows for endurance. The death certificate arrived the next day, filed by Dr. Price. Stephen looked at it through a haze of tears and sleeplessness and the particular fog that descends when reality becomes something your brain refuses to accept. The document said Donna Ramos was dead. The document was official. The document was a lie. But he did not know that. He would not know that for 4.5 years. Stephen slid the death certificate across the conference table. Donna stared at it. Her own name, date of death, cause of death, an official seal from the state of California. She was looking at proof of her own death, and the surreality of it was so complete that for a moment she felt outside her body. Watching this scene from above, watching a woman study a document that said she did not exist. "I buried you," Stephen said. His voice was barely controlled, a thin membrane between composure and collapse. "I stood in a room with 60 people and an empty casket because the hospital told me the remains had been mishandled. They said the cremation was botched. They said they were sorry for the additional trauma. I accepted it because I was holding a 9-day-old baby and I could not breathe, Donna. I could not breathe. I was not examining logistics or questioning paperwork. I was trying to figure out how to keep my daughter alive without the woman who was supposed to raise her with me." "And the gala," Donna said. Her voice was a whisper. "The broadcast. The gala was 9 days after you died. After I thought you died." Stephen's hands were flat on the table, mirroring hers, and she could see them trembling. It was a contractual obligation. Canceling would have triggered breach penalties that Voss, I now understand, had specifically engineered to be uncancelable. He needed me visible. He needed the world to see me as a grieving widower, not a suspicious CEO. Every moment of public sympathy I received was a moment the board was not scrutinizing the restructuring he was executing behind my back. I brought Lucia because I could not leave her. She was premature. She needed monitoring. Paloma was her neonatal nurse. She came to every event, every meeting, every dinner for the first 4 months of Lucia's life, because my daughter required medical supervision that I could not provide alone. When I stood at that podium and said my marriage was over, I was a man telling the world that his wife was dead, that the life he had built was finished, that the only thing left was this child. I was not smiling. I was surviving. There is a difference, and if you watched that clip and saw a smile, it is because you were watching through a lens of pain that interpreted everything as betrayal. I do not blame you for that, but I need you to know what I was actually feeling on that stage. I was feeling the same thing you were feeling in that hospital bed. Loss. Complete, total, irreversible loss. Donna's attorney spoke for the first time. "Mr. Ramos, can you explain the divorce filing?" Stephen nodded. The divorce papers were prepared by a firm called Hargrove and Lyle. I had never retained them. I had never heard of them. They were a subsidiary practice controlled by Nolan Voss through a shell company. The signature on the petition is a forgery. He slid another document across the table. "This is a handwriting analysis conducted by 2 independent experts, confirming that the signature on the divorce filing is not mine." He paused. The papers were delivered to Donna while she was in a hospital bed, drugged on painkillers, believing her daughter had died and her husband had abandoned her. Voss knew exactly what he was doing. He was closing every door simultaneously. If I thought Donna was dead, I would not look for her. If Donna thought I had filed for divorce while she was grieving, she would not come looking for me. We would each believe a different version of the same lie, and neither of us would ever have reason to question it. "It was," Stephen continued, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper, "the most efficient destruction of 2 lives I have ever seen. And it was done by a man I trusted, a man I invited into my company, into my boardroom, into the infrastructure of my family's future. I ignored your instincts about him, Donna. You told me something was wrong with him, and I called you dramatic. That is something I will carry for the rest of my life." The conference room was silent. Vera was crying openly, tears running down her face without sound. Donna's attorney had stopped writing, and was staring at the documents on the table with the focused intensity of someone who understood they were looking at evidence of crimes that would result in federal charges. And Donna stood at the window with her forehead against the glass, her breath leaving small clouds on the surface, and everything she had built for 6 years, every wall, every achievement, every story she had told herself about who she was and why she was strong. All of it was crumbling. She was not a woman who had survived betrayal. She was a woman who had survived a conspiracy. And the difference between those two things was the difference between an identity she had chosen and an identity that had been imposed on her by a man who calculated the mathematics of human heartbreak and used them for profit. "How did you find out?" Donna asked without turning from the window. Stephen explained. The financial anomaly, the payment to Price, the investigation that followed, the 23 months of searching, the 11 letters, the 4 investigative teams. "You disappeared completely," Stephen said. "Changed your name, moved to a town with no digital footprint, built a company under a brand that had no connection to your former identity. You were so thorough in erasing yourself that I began to wonder if the person who told me you were alive was wrong. If maybe the death certificate was real after all and the financial anomaly was just a coincidence. I almost gave up." "What stopped you?" "Lucia," Stephen said simply. "She stopped me. Because every day she looks more like you. She has your eyes, your expressions. She tilts her head the same way you do when she is thinking. And every time I looked at her face and saw yours, I could not accept that you were gone. I could not stop looking." "You said you found me through the magazine," Donna said. "Your face on the cover of Inc. magazine, 4 months ago. I was in a bookstore with Lucia. She wanted a coloring book. I walked past the magazine rack and your face was right there, looking at me from a newsstand like you had never left." He paused. "I dropped to the floor," he said. "In the middle of a bookstore. My 5-year-old daughter asked me why I was crying. I told her I found someone I had been looking for. She asked who. I said, someone who loves you very much, even though she does not know you yet." Donna pressed her palms flat against the window glass. Her shoulders were shaking, not crying, trembling. The physiological response of a body processing information too large for the nervous system to handle in real time. "Where is she?" Donna whispered. "Lucia. Where is she right now?" "In the car," Stephen said, "with Paloma. I did not bring her inside because I did not know if you would want to see her. I did not know if this meeting would end with you believing me or calling the police. I did not want her in the room if it went badly. Bring her in." Stephen stood. "Are you sure?" Donna turned from the window for the first time. Her face was wet. Her eyes were devastated. But her voice was steady with a certainty that came from somewhere beyond thought, somewhere cellular, somewhere in the part of her body that had carried this child and lost this child and mourned this child for 6 years and was now being told that the loss was a fiction and the child was alive and waiting in a car 50 feet away. "Bring me my daughter," Donna said. Stephen left the room. The door closed behind him, and the silence that remained was enormous. Vera moved to Donna's side immediately. She did not speak. She took Donna's hand and held it, and they stood together at the window, 2 women who had built a friendship on the foundation of grief that was now being revealed as something else entirely. 7 minutes passed. Donna counted every second. Each one felt like an hour. Each one was a lifetime of questions she could not answer. What does she look like? Does she know about me? Does she laugh the way I laugh? Does she like bread? Does she talk to herself when she is thinking? Does she know that her mother has been talking to her every night for 6 years, whispering to a ghost who turned out to be a girl in a yellow dress somewhere in Los Angeles? The door opened. The world changed. Lucia Ramos was 5 years old. She had Stephen's dark curls and Donna's wide-set amber eyes and a gap-toothed smile that she offered to the room like a gift she had plenty of and saw no reason to hoard. She wore a yellow dress with small embroidered daisies along the hem. She carried a stuffed elephant clutched against her chest with one ear half detached, and a body worn soft from years of being held by small hands that understood this particular elephant was more important than any toy in any store anywhere in the world. She looked at Donna with the frank, unapologetic curiosity of a child who has not yet learned that staring is impolite. She studied Donna's face with an intensity that was purely inherited, the same penetrating attention Donna brought to every formula she developed, the same laser focus Stephen brought to every room he entered. "Are you the lady Daddy has been looking for?" Lucia asked. Donna could not speak. Her hand covered her mouth and her knees buckled, and Vera was behind her instantly, arms around her waist, holding her upright, keeping her standing through the most disorienting moment of her life. Because this was not a stranger. This was not a concept or a memory or a ghost she whispered to in the dark. This was her daughter, her living, breathing, gap-toothed, daisy-wearing daughter, standing in a conference room in San Luis Obispo with a stuffed elephant, and no idea that her existence was rewriting the laws of physics for the woman in front of her. Yes, Stephen answered his daughter softly, crouching beside her. This is her. This is who I told you about. The one in the pictures? The one who makes the nice-smelling lotion? Yes, sweetheart. Lucia nodded, processing this information with the pragmatic efficiency of a child who trusts her father completely and has no reason to make this more complicated than it needs to be. She looked at Donna again. Longer this time. Evaluating. You are pretty, Lucia decided. Daddy said you were the prettiest person he ever met, but he says lots of things. I had to check. Something between a laugh and a sob escaped Donna's throat. The sound surprised her. She had not made that particular sound before. It belonged to a category of emotion she had no name for, the specific feeling of meeting someone you have already loved for years, someone you grieved and mourned and talked to in the dark, someone who was supposed to be a memory and is instead standing in front of you in a yellow dress, passing judgment on your appearance with the confidence of a 5-year-old who has clearly inherited your capacity for direct assessment. And, Donna managed, her voice rough and unsteady. Did I pass inspection? Yes, but your eyes are red. Are you sad? I am a lot of things right now. Sad might be one of them, but mostly I am just very, very glad to meet you. Lucia considered this. Then she extended the stuffed elephant. Do you want to hold Gerald? He makes people feel better. His ear is broken, but he still works. Donna took the elephant. She held it against her chest the way she had held the ultrasound photo for 6 years. Like proof, like evidence of something she had been told was impossible. Like the physical confirmation that the world contained miracles she had stopped believing in. Gerald was soft and worn and smelled like children's shampoo and graham crackers and the particular warmth of a toy that has been loved so thoroughly it has absorbed the essence of the person who loves it. Donna held him and felt something crack inside her chest. Not break. Crack. The way ice does when spring arrives after a winter that lasted 6 years. Making room for something that had been buried. Making space for something that was no longer willing to stay frozen. Thank you, Lucia, Donna whispered. Gerald is wonderful. I know, Lucia said matter-of-factly. I picked him myself. Vera made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Donna's attorney was pretending to review documents, but her eyes were red. Stephen stood by the door with his hands at his sides, watching his daughter offer her most prized possession to a woman who did not yet know she was her mother and his. Face held an expression that Donna had only seen once before, on the night she told him she was pregnant. The night he put his head on the kitchen table and wept from joy. Do you want to sit with me? Donna asked Lucia, gesturing to the chair beside hers. You could tell me about Gerald. I want to know everything about him. Lucia climbed into the chair with the confidence of someone who has never doubted she belongs wherever she chooses to sit. Gerald is 4 years old, she began, launching into a biography with the dedication of someone delivering a keynote presentation. I got him when I was 1, but I do not remember that part. Daddy says I picked him out of a whole shelf of animals at the toy store because he was the only one with floppy ears. The other elephants had stiff ears, but Gerald's ears are soft. That is how I knew he was special. Things that are a little bit broken are sometimes the most special things. Daddy told me that. Donna looked at Stephen. Stephen looked at the floor. That is a very smart thing for your daddy to say, Donna managed. He is smart sometimes, Lucia allowed, but he cannot braid hair very good. He watches videos on his phone and tries, but it always comes out lumpy. Do you know how to braid hair? I do, Donna said, and her voice broke on the second word. I am very good at braiding hair. Can you braid mine? Right now. Daddy always does it wrong, and I have been waiting for someone to do it right. Donna looked at this child. This impossible, miraculous, gap-toothed child who was asking a stranger to braid her hair with the trust that only children possess. The absolute faith that the world contains people who will be gentle with you if you let them close enough. Come here, Donna said. Lucia slid off her chair and stood between Donna's knees with her back turned, presenting her dark curls with the patience of someone who had done this many times before and understood the process. Donna's hands shook as she gathered her daughter's hair. She had imagined this. In the dark, In the cottage, in the hours between 10 at night and 4 in the morning, she had imagined what it would feel like to touch her daughter's hair. She had imagined it so many times that the reality felt like a memory rather than a first. She sectioned the hair into 3 parts. She began to braid, and the simple rhythmic motion of crossing one strand over another, the oldest and most ordinary act of care between a mother and a daughter, undid her completely. Tears ran down her face and landed in Lucia's dark curls, and Donna did not wipe them away. She did not stop braiding. She kept her hands moving because if she stopped, she would collapse, and if she collapsed, she might never stand again. So she braided, strand over strand, breath after breath, building something small and beautiful from the wreckage of everything she had believed. "You are doing it right," Lucia said approvingly. "I can tell because it does not feel lumpy. I will always do it right," Donna whispered. "I promise you that." When the braid was finished, Lucia turned around and looked at Donna's tear-streaked face. "You are crying," she observed. "Yes. Are you happy crying or sad crying? Daddy says there are different kinds." "Both," Donna said honestly. "I am both." Lucia reached up and wiped a tear from Donna's cheek with a small, warm hand. "That is okay," she said. "Daddy does that too sometimes. He happy cries and sad cries at the same time. Usually when he looks at the pictures." "What pictures?" Donna asked. "The pictures of you. He has a whole box of them in his closet. He thinks I do not know, but I found them when I was looking for my Halloween costume. There are pictures of you, and pictures of a room with yellow walls and stars on the ceiling. He looks at them sometimes when he thinks I am sleeping. The nursery, the yellow walls, the Silver Star mobile, the garden mural Donna had painted over 3 weekends, standing on a stepladder, talking to the baby she could not yet feel but already loved. Stephen had kept it, all of it. Photographs of a room they had built together for a child they both believed the other would never see. Donna closed her eyes. She held her daughter's hand against her cheek and breathed and let the last 6 years reorganize themselves inside her body. Every wall she had built, every story she had told herself about who she was, every midnight conversation with a ghost who was not a ghost but a girl who liked elephants with floppy ears and could tell the difference between a lumpy braid and a good one. It was all shifting, the tectonic plates of her identity grinding against each other, making new geography from the collision. She did not know yet what the landscape would look like when the earthquake stopped. She did not know who Donna Green was without the story of Stephen's betrayal. She did not know what was left when you removed the foundation of an empire built on grief that turned out to be manufactured. But she knew one thing. She knew it with the same certainty she had felt when she mixed the first batch of moisturizer on her kitchen counter at midnight. The certainty that comes not from evidence but from somewhere deeper, from the hands, from the body, from the place where knowledge lives before language finds it. Her daughter was alive. Her daughter was here. Her daughter's hair was braided properly for the first time in 5 years. And whatever came next, whatever impossible work of rebuilding and reckoning and forgiveness lay ahead, Donna Green was not going to let go of this child's hand. Not ever again. The hours that followed the meeting in that conference room were a geography of emotion that Donna would spend years trying to map. There were mountains of rage so steep she could not see the tops. Valleys of grief so deep the sunlight could not reach the bottom. And somewhere between them, a narrow winding river of something she was not ready to name, but could feel moving through her, carrying her forward whether she wanted to go or not. She did not leave the conference room for 3 hours after Lucia walked in. She could not. Her body had decided that this chair, this table, this room where her daughter sat beside her drawing elephants on the back of legal documents was the safest place in the world, and it was not going to move until it was absolutely certain that none of this would disappear if she stood up. Lucia drew 7 elephants. Each one had floppy ears. Each one had a name that she announced with the ceremonial gravity of someone christening a ship. "This is Gerald Jr. This is Professor Elephant. This is Brenda." "Why Brenda?" Donna asked. "Because she looks like a Brenda," Lucia replied, as though this were the most obvious thing in the world. Vera sat in the corner of the room, watching this exchange with the expression of someone witnessing something sacred and knowing better than to interrupt it. Stephen sat across the table, close enough to be present but far enough to give Donna space. He answered questions when Lucia directed them at him. He stayed quiet when she did not. He seemed to understand, with the instinct of a man who had spent 5 years learning to read the needs of a child, that this moment belonged to Donna and Lucia, and his role was to be available without being central. Donna's attorney excused herself after the first hour, citing other appointments, but really, Donna suspected, giving her client privacy for a moment that no legal framework could contain. Before she left, she leaned close to Donna's ear and said, "I will begin proceedings against Voss and Price immediately. Criminal referrals to the district attorney. Civil suit for damages. We will need your formal statement within the week. But today is not about that. Today is about her." She glanced at Lucia, who was explaining to Gerald the elephant that he was going to have 7 new friends, and he needed to be welcoming because some of them were shy, especially Brenda. Donna nodded. She could not speak. Her attorney squeezed her shoulder and left. At 2 in the afternoon, Lucia announced she was hungry. This announcement carried the urgency and authority of a 5-year-old who had learned that hunger was a condition the world was obligated to address immediately. "Can we get lunch?" she asked, looking between Donna and Stephen. "I want grilled cheese, with tomato soup, and the bread has to be the good kind, not the squishy kind. Daddy always gets the squishy kind." "I do not always get the squishy kind," Stephen protested gently. "I got the good kind last week." "That was one time," Lucia countered. "Out of 1,000,000 times. It has not been 1,000,000 times. It felt like 1,000,000 times." Donna watched this exchange and felt something shift inside her chest. This was what she had missed. Not the milestones, not the first words or first steps or first days of school, though she had missed all of those, and the grief of that missing would be its own lifelong project. What she had missed was this: the ordinary, tedious, beautiful negotiation of daily life between a parent and a child. The argument about bread. The casual intimacy of 2 people who had built 5 years of shared history from the raw materials of breakfast and bedtime and the endless, sacred repetition of showing up. Stephen had done that. For 5 years, alone, believing the woman he loved was dead, he had shown up. He had learned to braid hair badly. He had bought the wrong bread. He had kept a box of photographs in his closet and looked at them when he thought his daughter was sleeping. He had raised this child with a tenderness and a presence that Donna could see in every confident gesture Lucia made, in every fearless question she asked, in the way she offered her stuffed elephant to a crying stranger because she believed, with the unshakable faith of a well-loved child, that broken things could still make people feel better. He had been a good father. He had been exactly the father Donna would have wanted him to be if she had been there to see it. And the realization of that, the understanding that Stephen had not failed their daughter even in the midst of his own devastation, cracked something open inside Donna that she had kept sealed for 6 years. "I know a place," Donna said quietly. "There is a cafe 2 blocks from here. They make good grilled cheese. The bread is not squishy." Lucia looked at her with an expression of pure, radiant approval. "I like you," she declared. "You understand bread." They walked to the cafe together. The 4 of them, Donna, Stephen, Lucia, and Vera, moving down a sidewalk in San Luis Obispo on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon while the world continued around them, oblivious to the fact that a family was being reassembled in real time from pieces that had been scattered across 6 years and 600 miles of carefully constructed lies. Lucia walked between Donna and Stephen. She held Stephen's hand with her left hand because that was habit, because that was home, because his hand was the geography she knew. She held Gerald in her right hand because Gerald went everywhere, and this was non-negotiable. And every few steps she looked up at Donna with a sideways glance that was not quite trust, but was something adjacent to it. Curiosity, assessment, the beginning of a bridge being built from one side by a child who did not yet know why this woman mattered but sensed, with the intuition children carry like a sixth sense, that she did. At the cafe, they sat in a booth by the window. Lucia slid in beside Donna without being asked, a choice that carried a weight she was too young to understand but that landed on Donna's chest like a hand placed gently over her heart. They ordered grilled cheese for Lucia, tomato soup for the table. Donna ordered coffee she did not drink. Stephen ordered water he did not touch. They sat in the strange, charged silence of 2 adults who had spent 6 years in parallel grief, each believing the other was the cause, now discovering. They were both victims of the same architect of cruelty, trying to figure out how to exist in the same space without the walls they had built between them. Lucia filled the silence effortlessly, the way children do, unaware that the quiet she was interrupting was not peaceful but pressurized. She talked about her school, her best friend Maya, who had a cat named Spaghetti, Her teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who let them have extra recess on Fridays if everyone finished their reading journals. The ongoing construction project in the back corner of the classroom, where Lucia and 3 other students were building a cardboard city that had, according to Lucia, 16 buildings and a working elevator, which meant a string attached to a paper cup that went up and down if you pulled it. The elevator does not really work, she admitted. But if you use your imagination, it does. And Miss Rodriguez says imagination is the most important tool a person can have. Miss Rodriguez sounds very smart, Donna said. She is. She is the smartest person I know, after Daddy, and maybe after you because you know about bread. That is a high compliment, Donna replied. I will try to deserve it. You already do. You braided my hair right. That is basically impossible. Daddy has been trying for 3 years. Stephen looked at Donna over the top of Lucia's head. His eyes were full of something that Donna recognized because she was feeling it too. The impossible coexistence of gratitude and grief. The awareness that this moment, this ordinary, extraordinary moment of sitting in a cafe with their daughter eating grilled cheese was simultaneously the most beautiful and the most painful experience either of them had ever had. Beautiful because it was happening. Painful because it should have been happening for 5 years. After lunch, Lucia asked if Donna wanted to see her do a cartwheel. She had recently learned how and considered it her most significant achievement to date, surpassing both the cardboard elevator and her ability to whistle, which she demonstrated unsolicited. The cartwheel happened on the sidewalk outside the cafe. It was not technically proficient. Her legs did not straighten fully and she landed slightly sideways. But she stood up with her arms raised in triumph and her gap-toothed smile blazing and looked at Donna for approval with an intensity that suggested this was a test she desperately wanted to pass. That was incredible, Donna said. Absolutely incredible. I have been practicing every day, Lucia said, breathing hard. Daddy says I am getting better. You are definitely getting better, Stephen confirmed. Can you do a cartwheel? Lucia asked Donna. Donna had not done a cartwheel in approximately 20 years. Her body was 33 years old and had been through a cesarean and 6 years of grief and the particular physical toll of building a company from nothing on 4 hours of sleep a night. A cartwheel was medically inadvisable and personally undignified and absolutely out of the question. She did a cartwheel. It was terrible. She nearly fell. Vera gasped. Stephen took a half step forward as though he could catch her from 10 feet away. Lucia erupted into laughter so loud and so pure that people on the other side of the street turned to look. That was so bad, Lucia said, delighted. That was the worst cartwheel I have ever seen. I know, Donna said, brushing off her white blazer, which now had a grass stain on the sleeve. I am clearly out of practice. I can teach you, Lucia offered. It is all about keeping your legs straight. I would love that, Donna said, and she meant it with every cell in her body. She would love that. She would love anything this child offered to teach her. She would learn cartwheels and cat's cradle, and the names of all 16 buildings in the cardboard city, and the proper way to introduce Gerald to new elephant friends, and every other piece of knowledge this 5-year-old possessed. Because each piece was a year she had missed, a moment she had been robbed of, a fragment of her daughter's life that she could not get back but could begin, right now, today, on a sidewalk in San Luis Obispo, to collect going forward. The afternoon wound down the way afternoons do when children are involved gradually, with increasing negotiations about departure. Lucia did not want to leave. She wanted to show Donna more cartwheels. She wanted to tell her about Spaghetti the cat. She wanted to know if Donna had a favorite color and whether she liked puzzles and could she come to career day at school because Daddy came last year and talked about computers and it was boring. No offense, Daddy, but maybe Donna could talk about lotion and that would be more interesting. Stephen intervened gently. We need to let Donna get home, sweetheart. She has had a very long day. But I did not show her my cartwheel with a spin yet. You can show her next time, Stephen said. And then he looked at Donna with a question in his eyes that held the weight of everything that had happened and everything that had not happened yet. If there is a next time. Donna looked at Lucia. She looked at this child who had her eyes and Stephen's curls and a stuffed elephant named Gerald, and a gap in her teeth where a new tooth was coming in, and opinions about bread and cartwheels and cardboard elevators. She looked at the daughter she had grieved for 6 years. The daughter she had spoken to in the dark. The daughter she had believed was buried in a cemetery in Los Angeles alongside the woman Donna used to be. There will be a next time, Donna said. I promise you there will be a next time. Lucia hugged her. Not a polite, careful hug. A full body, arms wrapped around, face pressed into, Gerald, the elephant squished between them hug. The kind of hug children give when they have decided you belong to them, and physical contact is the contract. Donna held her daughter and breathed in the smell of children's shampoo and graham crackers and the particular warmth of a child who has been loved enough to trust the world. She held her, and she did not let go until Lucia squirmed and said, "You are squeezing Gerald." "Sorry," Donna whispered. "Tell Gerald I am sorry. Gerald says it is okay. He is very forgiving." "Of course he is," Donna said. "He is clearly a very good elephant." Lucia left with Stephen and Paloma. She waved from the car window until they turned the corner. Donna stood on the sidewalk and watched the car disappear and felt the absence land on her like a physical weight, sudden and total, the way silence lands after music stops. Vera stood beside her. She did not speak for a long time. The two of them stood on that sidewalk in the late afternoon light and let the magnitude of what had just happened settle around them like dust after a demolition. "I have a daughter," Donna said finally. The words sounded foreign in her mouth, like a language she had once spoken fluently and was now relearning from scratch. "You have a daughter," Vera confirmed. "She is alive. She has been alive this whole time. She likes grilled cheese and cartwheels and elephants with floppy ears. She is 5 years old and she can whistle, and she thinks imagination is the most important tool a person can have. All of those things are true, and everything I believed for 6 years is not true. Everything I built, everything I became, it was all based on a story that someone else wrote for me. A story I never questioned because I was too broken to ask questions." "Also true." Donna turned to Vera. Her face was raw, no armor left, no walls, just the exposed, vulnerable surface of a woman who had been stripped of every defense she had ever constructed. "Who am I now?" she asked. "If I am not the woman who survived Stephen's betrayal, who am I?" "You are the woman who survived anyway," Vera said. "The story was wrong, but the survival was real. The company is real. The foundation is real. The 300 people who have jobs because of you are real. You did not build Green and Gold Botanicals because Stephen betrayed you. You built it because you are someone who builds things. That was true before Stephen, during Stephen, and after Stephen. The motivation may have been based on a lie, but the work was not. The work was always you." Donna absorbed this. She stood on the sidewalk and let Vera's words move through her, finding places to settle, testing whether the architecture of herself could hold this new weight. "I need time," Donna said. "I know. I need time to figure out what this means. For me, for Lucia, for Stephen. I know that too. I do not know how to do this, Vera. I do not know how to be a mother to a 5-year-old I just met. I do not know how to be in the same room as a man I spent 6 years hating for something he did not do. I do not know how to dismantle the walls I built without losing the strength that built them." "You do not have to know any of that right now," Vera said. "You just have to know the next step." "What is the next step?" Donna thought about it. The fog was rolling in. The air smelled like salt and eucalyptus. Somewhere, in a car driving back to a hotel, a 5-year-old girl was probably telling a stuffed elephant about the woman who braided her hair right. "The next step," Donna said, "is going home. And then the next step is calling my attorney and making sure Nolan Voss spends the rest of his life understanding the consequences of what he did. And then the next step is seeing Lucia again, as soon as possible." "Those are 3 steps, Vera observed. "I have always been an overachiever." They drove back to Cambria in Vera's car. Donna stared out the window at the coastline she had driven 6 years ago when she was fleeing a life she thought had been destroyed by the man she loved. The same cliffs, the same ocean, the same fog, but the woman looking at them was not the same woman who had arrived here with 2 suitcases and a sealed envelope and nothing else. That woman had been certain that Stephen had betrayed her, certain that her daughter was dead, certain that the only way to survive was to build walls so high that nothing could reach her, and nothing could hurt her, and nothing could ever make her feel the way she felt in that hospital bed ever again. This woman was uncertain, and uncertainty, Donna was learning, required a completely different kind of strength than certainty. Certainty was a fortress. Uncertainty was an open field. And standing in an open field when you had spent 6 years inside a fortress was the most terrifying thing Donna Green had ever done. More terrifying than starting a company with no money. More terrifying than walking away from Los Angeles with 2 suitcases. More terrifying than watching a 93-second clip on a nurse's phone and feeling your entire life collapse into a single point of unbearable pain. Because those things, terrible as they were, had clarity. She knew what she was facing. She knew the enemy. She knew the story. Now the story had changed, and Donna had to decide who she was without it. She did not sleep that night. She sat on her deck in the dark and listened to the ocean and did not talk to Lucia's ghost. Because Lucia was not a ghost. Lucia was a girl with a yellow dress and a stuffed elephant, and she was alive in a hotel room somewhere, and she was probably sleeping right now with Gerald tucked under her arm, and her dark curls spread across a pillow, and her gap-toothed mouth slightly open the way children's mouths are when they sleep, soft and trusting and completely undefended. Donna sat in the dark and cried. Not the grief she had carried for 6 years. Not the silent, stoic, controlled weeping she permitted herself on the worst nights. She cried the way she had cried on the step with Vera the night she first said the words out loud, openly, loudly, without control or composure or concern for who might hear. She cried for the years she had missed, for the braids she had not done, for the cartwheels she had not witnessed, for the grilled cheese sandwiches she had not made, for every bedtime story and scraped knee and school morning and Tuesday afternoon she had been robbed of by a man who sat in a boardroom and decided that her life, her daughter's life, Stephen's life, were acceptable casualties in the pursuit of corporate control. She cried until there was nothing left, and then she sat in the emptiness and felt, for the first time in 6 years, clean. The legal machinery began moving the next day. Donna's attorney filed criminal referrals with the district attorney's office in Los Angeles. Fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of medical records, unauthorized transfer of a medical patient, filing a false death certificate, identity theft. The charges were numerous and serious, and each one carried the weight of 6 stolen years. Stephen's legal team had been building their case in parallel. With Donna's testimony and the private investigator's findings, the case against Nolan Voss became airtight. Voss was arrested 3 weeks after the conference room meeting, taken from his office at Ramos Capital Inn. Handcuffs while employees watched from their desks and understood, some for the first time, that the man who had run the company's finances for 6 years had been running something else entirely. Dr. Julian Price was arrested the same day. His medical credentials, such as they were immediately suspended. His cooperation with prosecutors, which was extensive and eager in the way that cowards become cooperative when facing prison, provided additional evidence that sealed Voss's fate. Donna did not watch the arrests. She did not celebrate them. She felt a grim satisfaction that she refused to call justice, because justice implied that the damage could be repaired, and some damage is permanent. You cannot give a mother back the first 5 years of her daughter's life. You cannot undo the grief. You cannot unfeel the phantom kicks or unhear the silence of a nursery that was never used. You can only ensure that the person responsible faces consequences, and hope that the consequences provide enough closure to move forward. They were enough. Barely, but enough. What Donna focused on instead was Lucia. Stephen rented a house in Cambria within a week of the meeting. A small bungalow 2 miles from Donna's home, close enough to be accessible, but far enough to respect the boundaries that Donna needed while she navigated the most complex emotional terrain of her life. He enrolled Lucia in a local school. He set up his Denver office. He restructured his schedule so that he could be in Cambria full-time for the foreseeable future, handling Ramos Capital remotely. When Donna asked him why he was uprooting his entire life, he said something that she carried with her for months afterward. "I did not have a life in Los Angeles," Stephen said. "I had a routine. I had a schedule. I had a company and a house and a daughter, and all of it was built on top of a grave that did not have a body in it. Every day for 5 years I woke up in a city where I buried you. The walls of that house were filled with you. The streets were filled with you. I could not walk through a grocery store without seeing something you would have liked, or hearing a song you would have hummed, or passing a woman with dark hair and having my heart stop for half a second before I remembered. Moving here is not uprooting my life. It is planting it somewhere that has you alive in it instead of dead." Donna did not respond to that. She could not. The words were too large for the space she had available. She filed them away in the part of herself where she kept things that mattered too much to examine in real time, and she focused on what she could control. Visits with Lucia. They started small, 1 hour at a time. Donna would meet them at the park, or the bakery, or the beach. Neutral territory. Low pressure. She would sit with Lucia and listen to her talk about school and Gerald and the ongoing saga of Maya and Spaghetti the cat, and she would absorb every word like a woman drinking water after 6 years in the desert. Lucia did not know Donna was her mother. Not yet. Stephen and Donna had agreed that the information needed to be delivered carefully, at the right time, in the right way, with the support of a child psychologist who could help Lucia process something that most adults could barely comprehend. For now, Donna was Daddy's friend, the nice lady who knew about bread and braided hair and did terrible cartwheels. Lucia accepted this characterization with the easy flexibility of a 5-year-old who did not require people to have labels in order to matter. But children see things adults miss. And Lucia, who had inherited Donna's observational precision and Stephen's analytical mind, was beginning to notice things. She noticed that Donna looked at her differently than other adults looked at her. Not casually, not politely, but with a kind of attention that was almost physical, as though Donna was trying to memorize her in real time, storing every detail against the possibility that this might be taken away again. She noticed that Donna cried sometimes when she thought Lucia was not watching. Quick tears, wiped away immediately, followed by a smile that was not quite convincing. She noticed that Donna and her father spoke to each other in a way that was different from how other adults spoke to each other, carefully, gently, with the kind of cautious attention people use when they are handling something fragile and precious and do not want to drop it. And one afternoon, 3 weeks into the visits, sitting on the beach with sand in her shoes and Gerald on her lap and the ocean doing its eternal performance in front of them, Lucia asked the question Donna had been both dreading and hoping for. "Are you my mommy?" Donna's breath stopped. Not a dramatic gasp, not a visible reaction. Just a cessation of oxygen, a pause in the most basic function of being alive, while her brain tried to find an answer that was honest without being overwhelming and simple, without being dismissive and true, without being too much truth for a 5-year-old sitting on a beach with sand in her shoes. "What makes you ask that?" Donna said. "Buying time, buying seconds, because you look at me the way Daddy looks at me," Lucia said. "Like I am the most important thing, and because you cried when you braided my hair, and mommies cry when they braid hair. Maya's mommy cries sometimes when she braids Maya's hair, and Maya says it is because mommies love their kids so much it leaks out of their eyes." Donna closed her own leaking eyes. "And because," Lucia continued with the relentless logic of a child assembling a case, "Daddy has pictures of you in his closet. And one of the pictures is a room with yellow walls and stars on the ceiling. That is a baby room. I know because Maya's little brother has a baby room. So, you and Daddy had a baby, and I am the only baby. So the yellow room was for me, and you are my mommy." The silence after this declaration was enormous. The ocean filled it partially, doing what the ocean does, continuing regardless of what happens on shore. A seagull screamed somewhere overhead. Gerald stared blankly forward with his one intact ear and his one floppy ear and his unchanging expression of stuffed animal neutrality. Donna opened her eyes. She looked at Lucia, this impossible, brilliant, terrifying child who had taken scattered pieces of evidence and assembled them into a truth that 2 adults and a child psychologist had been trying to figure out how to deliver. "Yes," Donna said. "I am your mommy." She had planned speeches. She had practiced explanations with a psychologist. She had prepared age-appropriate language about complicated situations and adults making mistakes and sometimes families being separated by things that are not anyone's fault. She had prepared all of it, and now, sitting on this beach with this child, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the truth, and the truth was 2 words. "I knew it," Lucia said. She did not cry. She did not look confused or upset or afraid. She looked satisfied. The expression of someone who has confirmed a hypothesis they were already confident about. "I knew it because of how you hold Gerald. You hold him like he is real. Only mommies hold stuffed animals like they are real." Donna laughed. It came out wet and broken and full of something she had forgotten she could feel. "Why were you not here before?" Lucia asked. The question was not accusatory. It was genuinely curious. The question of a child who wants to understand the world, not judge it. "I was lost," Donna said. She chose the simplest, truest version. "A bad person told Daddy and me a lie. The lie made Daddy think I was gone, and it made me think you were gone. And we both believed the lie because we were very sad and scared, and sometimes when people are very sad and scared, they believe things that are not true because it is easier than looking for the real truth. But you found the real truth. We did. It took a long time, but we found it. Lucia considered this with the gravity of someone processing information that would rearrange the furniture of her entire world. "Is the bad person in trouble?" she asked. "Yes," Donna replied. "The bad person is in a lot of trouble." "Good," Lucia said with finality. Then she looked up at Donna with those amber eyes, her mother's eyes, and said, "Can I call you Mommy now? Or do I have to wait for something?" Donna's vision blurred. "You can call me Mommy right now," she managed. "Right now. You do not have to wait for anything. Not ever again." "Mommy," Lucia said, testing the word. It sounded new in her mouth. Foreign, but not uncomfortable. Like a shoe she had not worn before, but that fit perfectly. "Mommy, I like how that sounds." "I like how it sounds too," Donna whispered. They sat on the beach together for a long time after that. Lucia leaned against Donna's side and talked about ordinary things. About Spaghetti the cat and the cardboard elevator and whether purple was a real color or just blue and red pretending to be something else. And Donna listened to every word and held her daughter against her side and felt the last wall, the tallest one, the one she had built first and reinforced every day for 6 years. The wall between herself and the possibility of being whole come down. It did not come down dramatically. It did not shatter or explode or collapse in a cloud of dust. It dissolved, slowly, the way fog dissolves when the sun finds it, lifting from the ground in layers, revealing the landscape underneath, showing her what had been there all along, hidden by something that felt permanent but was really just temporary, just vapor, just fear. Stephen was waiting at the park when they walked back from the beach. He could tell from Donna's face that something had shifted. He looked at Lucia. He looked at Donna. He asked the question with his eyes. "She knows," Donna said quietly while Lucia ran ahead to the swings. "She figured it out herself. She is apparently a detective." "She gets that from you," Stephen said. Donna almost smiled. "She gets the stubbornness from you. That is probably fair." They stood side by side and watched their daughter swing, pumping her legs with the furious determination of someone who believed that if she swung high enough she could touch the sky. Gerald was wedged beside her on the swing seat, his floppy ear fluttering in the wind like a small, improbable flag. "I have been thinking," Donna said, "about what Vera told me. That the story was wrong, but the survival was real. That I did not build Green and Gold because of what you did to me. I built it because building is what I do." She paused. "And I have been thinking about what that means for us, for you and me, not as Lucia's parents, as people." Stephen was very still beside her. He did not speak. He understood that Donna was navigating toward something, and that any interruption from him might redirect her away from where she was trying to go. "I spent 6 years hating you," Donna continued. "Hating you was the engine that powered everything. It powered the company. It powered the foundation. It powered my ability to get out of bed on the mornings when the grief was so heavy I could not breathe. I told myself that every success was proof that I did not need you. Every dollar earned was a repudiation of the man who threw me away. It was fuel, Stephen. And it worked. It got me here. But now the fuel is gone because the story was not true. And I have to figure out what powers me without it." "You do not need fuel," Stephen said carefully. "You never did. You are not a machine that requires anger to function. You are a person. People are powered by different things at different times. Maybe rage got you through the first 6 years. Maybe something else gets you through the next 6. Like what? I do not know. That is not my answer to give. But I think, and I say this knowing I have absolutely no right to say it, I think maybe you could try letting the engine be something other than pain, not because the pain was not real. It was, but because you deserve to be powered by something that does not require you to be hurt in order to move." Donna watched Lucia swing, higher and higher, legs pumping, Gerald bouncing, gap-toothed smile visible even from this distance. "We are going to do this slowly," Donna said. "Very slowly. I need time to figure out who I am now. I need time with Lucia. I need time to dismantle the architecture I built inside myself and figure out what is real structure and what is scaffolding I do not need anymore. And I need you to be patient with that process, even when it is frustrating and even when it takes longer than you want it to." "I have waited 5 years for a woman I thought was dead," Stephen said. "I can wait as long as you need." She did not respond to that. She let the words settle over her like the fog rolling in, obscuring the edges, softening the sharp lines, making room for something she was not ready to see clearly but could feel approaching. We are almost at the end of this story, but before I tell you how it ends, before I describe the moment that everything comes together, I need to speak to you one final time. If you have been with me from the beginning of this journey, from that hospital bed to this park bench, then you understand something about stories that most people miss. You understand that the best stories are not the ones with the biggest twists or the most dramatic confrontations. The best stories are the ones that show you what it looks like when broken people choose to rebuild, not because it is easy, not because someone wrote them a happy ending, but because they decided, consciously and deliberately, that the wreckage was not the final chapter. That is what Donna and Stephen are doing right now, rebuilding, slowly, carefully, with the understanding that some of the pieces will not fit the way they used to, and that the new structure might look nothing like the old one. If this story has made you feel something real, if you believe in the kind of courage that does not look like strength but looks like vulnerability, like standing in an open field after 6 years inside a fortress and choosing not to go back, then hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that the worst chapter is not the last chapter. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Stories because this is what we do here. We tell stories about people who refuse to let their worst moments be their final moments. And I promise you, the way this story ends is something you will carry with you for a very long time. Now, the ending. The months that followed were not a montage. They were not a highlight reel of perfect moments set to inspirational music. They were the slow, unglamorous daily work of two people learning to exist in the same world after 6 years of existing in separate ones. Donna and Stephen did not rush. There was nothing to rush toward. There was only the patient, deliberate process of learning who each of them had become, and whether those people could build something together that was different from what they had lost. Donna spent her mornings at green and gold botanicals. She spent her afternoons with Lucia. The routine established itself naturally, organically, without force or negotiation. She picked Lucia up from school 3 days a week. They went to the bakery where Serafina, who had watched Donna transform from a hollow-eyed stranger into a woman with a daughter and a messy, complicated, extraordinary life, taught Lucia how to shape bread rolls while telling stories about Portugal in a language Lucia did not speak but somehow understood. Donna taught Lucia to braid. They practiced on each other, sitting cross-legged on Donna's living room floor with Gerald propped against a cushion supervising. Lucia was a better student than Stephen had been. Her braids were tight and even, and she completed them with the satisfied precision of someone who had finally found the right teacher. "Mommy," Lucia said one afternoon, her fingers working through Donna's dark hair with careful concentration. "Why is your hair different from mine?" "Different how?" Donna asked. "Your hair is straight, and mine is curly. Daddy's is curly too. How come I got Daddy's hair and not yours? You got some things from me and some things from Daddy. That is how it works. You got my eyes." Lucia considered this. "I like my eyes," she decided. "They are a good color. They are the best color. But I wish I had straight hair too. Then I could pick which one to wear each day. Like choosing between shoes." Donna laughed. "Hair does not work like shoes, baby. It should. Whoever invented hair made some mistakes. I will pass that feedback along," Donna said. And they both laughed, and the sound of it, mother and daughter laughing together on a living room floor while a one-eared elephant watched from a cushion, was a sound Donna had imagined 6,000 times in the dark, and which turned out, in reality, to be even better than she had dreamed. Stephen was there, present, consistent, not pushing, not retreating, existing in the space Donna allowed him, which expanded gradually, like a room being furnished one piece at a time. He came for dinner at Donna's house on Wednesdays. He cooked because he had learned to cook during the 5 years alone, trial and error and YouTube, and the specific determination of a single father who refused to raise his daughter on takeout and frozen meals. His pasta was excellent. His roasted chicken was ambitious. His attempts at baking were catastrophic, and Serafina had told him in no uncertain terms that he was banned from the bakery kitchen after the focaccia incident, the details of which no one would share with Donna but which apparently involved a fire extinguisher. They talked during those dinners, not about the past, not about Voss or the trial or the years they had lost. They talked about the present, about Lucia's school projects and Donna's new product line, and Stephen's efforts to run a billion-dollar company from a rented bungalow in a town with one traffic light. They talked about the future, carefully, in small doses, the way you introduce a new food to someone with a sensitive stomach. And slowly, so slowly that Donna almost did not notice it happening, The space between them changed, not from cold to warm, from careful to comfortable, from two people sitting on opposite sides of a table to two people sitting at the same table, a distinction that sounded small but felt enormous. One evening, 11 months after the conference room meeting, Donna stood in her kitchen after Lucia had gone to sleep in the guest room that had become her room, decorated with elephant drawings and a purple bedspread, and a nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling, because Donna had remembered the nursery, the yellow walls, the Silver Star mobile, and she had wanted Lucia to sleep under stars the way she had always intended. Stephen was washing dishes. He had insisted on washing them because Donna had cooked, and he believed in equity, and because Donna suspected, he liked the domesticity of it. The ordinariness, the feeling of being in a kitchen with someone, doing something simple, being part of a routine that was not impressive or cinematic or worthy of a magazine cover, but was real in a way that mattered more than any of those things. Donna watched him. She watched his hands in the soapy water, and the way his sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and the concentration on his face as he scrubbed a pot that had burned slightly on the bottom, because Donna's risotto technique was still imperfect, and she refused to acknowledge it. "I love you," Donna said. She did not plan it. She did not rehearse it. The words came out of her the way bread rises, slowly, inevitably, because the conditions were right, and the ingredients had been assembled and the warmth had been applied with enough patience and enough time. Stephen went still. His hands stopped moving in the water. He did not turn around immediately. He stood there with his back to her, and Donna could see his shoulders rise and fall with a breath that carried the weight of 6 years and 600 miles, and a box of photographs in a closet, and an empty casket, and a child who could not get a proper braid, and a woman on a magazine cover who turned out to be alive. He turned around. His eyes were full. His hands were wet and soapy, and he did not care. "I never stopped," he said. "Not for a single day. Not when I thought you were dead. Not when I stood in that room with the empty casket. Not when I looked at Lucia's face every morning and saw yours looking back at me. I loved you through all of it. I loved you when loving you was the most painful thing in the world because you were supposed to be gone, and my heart did not get the message." Donna crossed the kitchen. She took his wet, soapy hands in hers and held them. "I know," she said. "That is why I can say it now. Because it is not hope anymore. It is not a wish or a fantasy or the desperate longing of a woman trying to rewrite her story. It is evidence. 11 months of evidence. 5 years of photographs in a closet. A lifetime of showing up. You showed up, Stephen. When you thought I was dead, you showed up for our daughter. When you found out I was alive, you showed up for me. When I pushed you away and tested you and made you prove yourself over and over, you showed up. That is not a promise. That is a pattern. And patterns are what I trust." Stephen pulled her close. Donna let herself be pulled. She let herself rest against his chest and feel his heart beat through his shirt and close her eyes and breathe and exist, for the first time in 6 years, inside a moment that was not defended or controlled or braced for impact. She was standing in the open field. No fortress, no walls, no armor. Just the raw, terrifying, beautiful vulnerability of a woman who had learned that survival was not the same as living, and who had finally, after everything, chosen to live. They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the dishes sat half-washed in the sink, and the night settled around the house, and somewhere down the hall, a 5-year-old girl slept under projected stars with a 1-eared elephant tucked under her arm, dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dream about. Cartwheels, probably. Cardboard elevators. Purple things that might or might not be real colors. The ordinary, extraordinary landscape of a childhood that had been stolen and recovered, and was now being lived, fully, noisily, messily, by a family that had been broken apart by cruelty and put back together by the stubborn, relentless, irrational human refusal to stop loving. A year later, they stood together on the cliffs above Cambria, the 3 of them, Donna, Stephen, and Lucia. The fog was rolling in the way it always did, soft and inevitable, turning the world into something dreamlike and half-hidden. Lucia stood between them, holding both their hands, Gerald tucked under one arm, looking out at the ocean with the thoughtful expression of someone who is about to say something important. "Mommy," she said. "Can we get a dog?" Stephen laughed. Donna shook her head. Lucia grinned. They got the dog, a ridiculous golden retriever puppy they named Gerald II, who chewed everything and adored everyone and had absolutely no respect for personal boundaries or expensive furniture, or the carefully maintained inventory of a skincare company whose founder worked from home and kept samples on low shelves that were apparently irresistible to dogs. Gerald II destroyed a limited edition batch of the coastal sage serum in his first week. Donna calculated the loss at $14,000. Lucia said it was Gerald II's way of saying the formula needed more lavender. Stephen said nothing but cleaned up the mess and quietly moved the remaining inventory to higher shelves. They were a family. Not the family they would have been if none of it had happened. Not the family of the yellow nursery and the Silver Star Mobile and the life they had planned before Nolan Voss decided their happiness was an acceptable casualty. They were a different family. A family built from wreckage and recovery and the understanding that the worst things that happen to you do not get to write the last page of your story unless you let them. Donna kept the sealed envelope in her nightstand drawer. She never opened it. She did not need to. The ultrasound photo inside it was a relic of a grief that had been real even when its cause was not. She kept it not as a reminder of pain, but as evidence of survival. Proof that she had endured something that should have destroyed her and had emerged not unscathed, never unscathed, but whole. Whole in the way that Gerald the elephant was whole. A little broken, a little worn. One ear not quite right, but still working, still loved, still held by someone who understood that the most special things in the world were the ones that had survived being damaged. The story did not end there. Real stories never do. They continue and evolve and present new challenges that require new courage. But the challenges that came after were faced together by a woman who had learned that walls are not the same as strength, and a man who had learned that showing up is not a single act but a daily practice, and a child who had taught them both that broken things can still make people feel better, that imagination is the most important tool a person can have, and that everything, absolutely everything, needs more butter. This is a story about the lies we survive and the truths that set us free. But more than that, it is a story about what happens after the revelation, after the anger, after the justice and the reckoning, and the slow, unglamorous work of rebuilding a life from the inside out. What happens after is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. It does not fit neatly into a 93-second clip. What happens after is breakfast, and braids, and dogs that chew expensive things, and Wednesday night dinners where the risotto burns slightly and nobody cares, and a 5-year-old who grows into a 6-year-old and then a 7-year-old, and then a young woman who carries a orange stuffed elephant in her college dorm because some things you never outgrow and the people who love you never ask you to. What happens after is a life, ordinary and extraordinary and entirely, finally, real. If this story has changed something in you, if it has shifted the way you think about survival or forgiveness or the quiet daily courage of choosing to stay open in a world that gives you every reason to close, then do one thing for me. Share it. Not for the algorithm, not for the numbers. Share it because somewhere out there someone is sitting in their own hospital bed, watching their own 93-second clip, believing a story that might not be true. Share it because that person deserves to know that the worst chapter is not the last chapter, that broken things still work, that the fog always lifts eventually, if you are patient enough and brave enough to wait for the sun. This has been Mr. Dawson Stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing, even when the story seemed impossible, that it was worth staying until the end. Because it was. It always is.